Thank you so much, Scott. Hi, everyone. I feel very honored to be a keynote speaker at this conference. Just thinking back to the start of my career, the Code Newbie community was a huge part of my early days in tech. And now that I'm here on this virtual stage, giving this talk, it just makes me feel very excited. In today's talk, I will be exploring some different learning models and how they can help and benefit you in growing your career as a developer, or regardless of wherever you are in tech. I made this tweet a couple of months ago, and it says, one secret ingredient to a successful career in tech is putting your work and yourself out there. Even up till this day, this statement still holds true for me. And having experienced this firsthand in my career, I'm very happy to share some actionable tips and ideas that would help you practice a learning technique that will work for you. And a key part of that learning technique is how to learn in public. Again, hi, everyone. My name is Gift Egwuenu. I currently work as a front-end developer. And I really enjoy creating content for developers. And I do that on my personal blog and as well as on my YouTube channel. Throughout the course of this talk, I'm going to be exploring three main points. The first being why you should always stay up to date in tech. What's the need for you to keep up learning in tech? The second point would be, what are the different learning techniques that you could explore to help you pivot your career in tech? And these techniques are things that I have tested and tried myself, and they really work. And lastly, I would focus on the last technique, which is learning in public, sharing what learning in public is, why you should actually learn in public, and how to go about doing it. How do you stay up to date in tech? If I was to walk up to a group of engineers now and ask them this question, what do you think would be the answer? I'm pretty sure some of them will have different methods that works for them, right? That's just to show that not everybody has the same way of learning. Different people have different learning methods that works for them. It could be that as a developer, you prefer watching tutorials. It could be that you prefer just reading the documentation. Different learning models works for different people. Now, let's take a look at this illustration for a bit. These are some groups of learning models that exist. And here you have representations of an average person's retention rate. And the interesting thing about this learning pyramid is the lowest level of retention you get out of reading for reading is 10%. Now compare that to, say, the highest, which is teaching other people. So if you're trying to learn a concept, you could as well just read about it, right? But I bet you the level of understanding or retention that you get out of that compared to actually learning something and teaching other people is worthwhile. And that's the idea that I'm trying to bring to you in this keynote, learning in public. Now, I already said that there are different methods that works for different people, right? Not everybody has the same method. Even one person could have several different methods that works for them. Like, for example, myself, I really am very, I prefer watching videos. Like, I like seeing visual stuff when I'm learning something. So I prefer watching videos and also tutorials that has a lot of visual content. That's what works for me. For you, it could be that you just want to read a book and try to understand the concept. That's totally fine. Now, the real truth about learning anything is that there is no straight path to learning a topic. Like, you have to try different things, try different methods that works for you, right? And that idea just is depicted in this graph, as you see here. What you think, this is a popular thing that happens on social media, what you think something is and what it actually is. So what people think learning seems like it's a straight path. You just go on, learn something, read a book, and you have all the knowledge you think you would need for that specific topic. But actually, in the real sense of things, learning actually looks like The second graphical picture you see here, it's not a straight path. So you try different things on your road to gaining knowledge in a specific area. Now, we're going to explore 4 learning techniques in this talk. I have tried all of this, and I'm pretty confident to tell you that it worked for me. The last one is something that I'm very passionate about now, and I'm going to spend more time explaining that. But the first technique here is called the Feynman's technique. And I'm pretty sure when I explain this, you definitely resonate with it, because I'm sure some people here are probably already tried doing this without even knowing that it's a thing. The Feynman's technique is a technique where you try to teach yourself something in the most simplest form possible, and it follows 4 processes. The first thing you do have to do is choose a topic you're interested in learning. Then try to explain it to yourself, or it could even be you're trying to explain it to somebody else. But try to explain it to yourself as if you're explaining it to a child. After that, you try to identify the gaps in your knowledge and then return to the source. So I could give you a typical example. You're trying to learn a new programming language, say Vue.js. I love Vue.js, so obviously I have to use that as an example. And I'm trying to understand a core concept in Vue, say state management, right? In order for me to properly assimilate this knowledge, I would go on to teach myself as if I'm teaching a child, and then identify the gaps in my knowledge, return to the source just to clear up those gaps, and go back again and simplify the explanation to myself. I use this a lot when I'm writing articles, just because I want other people reading my articles to understand it in the simplest form possible and not to share vague knowledge, right? The Feynman's technique is something that I've definitely tried, and it works for me. It helps me understand concepts that, for example, I'm having difficulties understanding. The other technique here is guided and unguided learning. Now, this is very, very similar to what you typically know as learning, right? A guided learning in this case follows a guided path. So you could use tutorials, courses, videos for this path. While on the other hand, unguided learning doesn't really have any paths. You already know in your head that you're trying to understand a specific topic, but you don't stick to any form of learning tutorial or courses or videos. You have an idea in mind, I want to build this, or I want to learn this specific topic. You could either go to the docs to learn something about it, watch a YouTube video, try to build an app from scratch in order for you to understand the topic or the concept that you're trying to learn. Now, this is also something I do every day, right? In a typical work day for me, I'm trying to figure out a bug fix. The first thing I do is I go on Google and I search for that error that I'm getting. This also happens to a lot of other developers. So it could be that I am trying to follow the guided learning approach. To learn a new concept, I watch a tutorial, I watch a video course, or I go on YouTube to learn something about it. Or it could be that I am in a situation where I just need to get specific insights on a topic, and I do a quick Google search, I check the docs, right? This is another learning method you could use in your career. Now, this is another interesting one that I recently found out about and I've tried. It's called spaced repetition. Spaced repetition is a powerful technique that will help you memorize information in much less time than you would think it would take. Spaced repetition is a memory technique that involves reviewing information before it is forgotten, right? And you try to remember it at certain intervals. In a long run, what you're trying to do is trick your brain to understand a specific concept by trying to remember it at specific intervals. Now, if you see this illustration that I have here, I have 3 boxes, right? And in each box, I write down, let's say each of those items you see in each box is a sticky note. In each of those sticky notes, I try to write down a concept that I'm trying to understand. How this works is you put in all the sticky notes in the first box and you set an interval for when you want to review them. It could be that you want to review them every 24 hours, or for the first box, right? Every 48 hours. It could even be every 1 hour if you have the time. Now, the goal here is if you try to remember something you've written in that box and you remembered it correctly, you have to move it to the next box. If you try to remember and you don't, you have to leave it in the first box. Just so you see the illustration again. Oh, it's not working. Okay. The idea is you move a sticky from one box to another when you correctly get the concept. Now, I have a very interesting illustration or a very interesting comic that actually demonstrates this in action. It's kind of like a game, but it walks you through what spaced repetition is, how it works. If you're interested in playing this game and just understanding how it really works, you can check out the CodeLand post where I left a link for this website. But the idea is you space out the concepts you're trying to learn, right? And you try to recall them at certain intervals, say 24 hours. When you recall it, that's great. You move it to the next box. If you don't recall it, you move it to the previous box, or you leave it where it currently is and continue repeating that until you properly understand the concepts that you're trying to learn. Now, the star of the day, learning in public. This is another learning model that I literally use almost every day because I do it now without even realizing that this is what I'm doing. What is learning in public? It's in the name, right? It's you learning publicly. You could either be doing this because you have a goal in mind, or just because you want to share your knowledge, or you want a community of learners to be you want to be among a community of learners. And I will explain this by giving an example. I think learning in public is the fastest way to learn, grow, and build your career. I'm saying this because I'm a testament of that, right? And learning in public is not something that I coined. It's an essay that someone actually brought up. His name is Sean Wang. And 2 years ago, I read this essay. And at the time, I was very open to sharing. I had already done a bit of learning in public without realizing that that was what I was doing. And when I read this essay, I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I've been doing the entire time. And this even gave me more perspective to how to improve and how to do more in that regard. Now, learning in public is essentially sharing your learning publicly. And one thing to note is if there are 100 people in a room that are developers, I could say probably 1% of them are learning in public. 99% of other people or other developers don't share or don't learn publicly, they learn privately. It could be that they are taking a course, which is totally fine. There's nothing wrong in doing that. But following this method, following the learning in public method, will even help you further. And I will also explain towards the end of this talk. Now, this idea is not something that is owned or followed by just one person. I've seen a ton of people preach about it. I've seen a ton of people that also support the idea. Some examples of those people are Ken C. Dodds and Josh Cormier. And they talk about this a lot. They've even written about it. I recently listened to this podcast by Ken C. Dodds sharing what learning in public is, his idea of learning in public or building in public. And also read this blog post from Josh on how to learn stuff quickly. And towards the end of that post, he also shared the idea of learning in public. So just so you know, it's not a new idea. It's something a lot of people practice. And as a developer, it's something that could help you when you're trying to grow in your career. Now, what's the entire concept of learning in public, or how do you go about it if you're interested in trying it out? It's not something that you have to follow a strict rule on. It depends on your interest and what you want to do. But the core idea is when you're learning in public, you share your knowledge publicly through either of these mediums. You could either write a blog post or a tutorial, speak at a meetup or a conference, exactly what I'm currently doing now. You could go on Stack Overflow to ask questions, not just ask questions, but also answer questions on Stack Overflow. You could make videos on Twitch or YouTube. I've also done this. It's also interesting, but nowadays there are a lot of developers that are sharing their knowledge publicly through newsletters. That's also an option if you're thinking about it. And the last one is also interesting, and I feel like this might vary for people from person to person. If you have a very huge interest in, or if you're an artistic person, you could also share your knowledge, or you could also learn in public using cartoons, making sketch notes, or making zines. Now, there are people, personally, I've done most of this, right? But there are other people in the tech community that are consistently and constantly sharing their knowledge, learning in public, using some of these methods. Let's see some examples. Now, it's very popular on Twitter to see examples like this, where people share, oh, today I learned how to do this. Oh, I didn't know how to do this before, but now I just learned it. What are they doing in essence? They're sharing or they're learning in public. They don't just learn something and keep it to themselves, but they also share it. That's the whole idea of learning in public. This is one of my favorites, and it's from someone called Julia Evans. She does this programming zines where she illustrates she tries to teach a specific topic using illustrations like this. And she doesn't just share it. She doesn't just make it and keep it. She also shares it publicly, right? That's another example of learning in public. Another of my favorites, I really like sketchnoting, but I don't have the perfect artistic skills to make something as pretty as this. But Nitya is someone that I really admire, and she's consistently sharing her knowledge through sketch notes. If you would like to find more of her work, you can check sketchthedocs.dev. But what she does is she tries to teach a specific concept, mostly on cloud skills, using sketch notes, and then shares it publicly. This is another example of learning in public. Now, remember I mentioned videos as a way of learning in public, right? There are people that are consistently doing this. Someone that I really admire is Jason. Jason has a show called Learn with Jason, where he invites other people in the industry to teach him a concept live on the show. Now, if you check his entire playlist, you see that there are varying types of knowledge he's gaining literally every week from learning from other developers. That's another example of how to learn publicly. Shameless plug, I also do this. I mentioned that I make YouTube videos. And one of the reasons why I make YouTube videos is, one, to obviously share my knowledge, but also to learn in public, right? I could give you an example. One of those videos you see then called Nox.js content, at the time, I was trying to learn it and use it at work. And I decided, well, it would be nice to actually make a video out of this. And I went ahead to make that video. The most important thing that I got, or that I get from learning publicly, is that it helps me solidify my knowledge. Now, why does learning in public work? I mean, you could ask other people that are constantly learning in public why it works for them. But I think these are 3 reasons why it works in general. The first is the 1% rule. Like I said, if you have a group of developers, probably only 1% out of that group shares publicly. 99% of developers are always learning in private. I mean, it's not bad. It's not a terrible idea to learn in private. But the essence of learning in public is you're indirectly teaching somebody else something you just learned, right? The other thing, or the other reason why it works, is because of the Cunningham's law. And this has happened to me in several scenarios. The Cunningham's law states that the best way to find the right answer on the internet is not to ask a question, but to post the wrong answer. Now, there are times where I'm learning a specific thing and probably I made the wrong statement, or I said something that was not correct. And I've had people correct me on the internet. I mean, one reason why I hear people say they don't want to post or make blog posts or make videos because they're scared of making mistakes. I think it's okay. Personally, when I make mistakes, I get corrections, I correct them, I move on from there. It only makes me a better person. It only makes me a better content creator, right? So the reason why it works is, of course, because you learn publicly, you get support from other people in the community. It could even be that a concept that you try to teach, the creator of the specific tool, it has happened to somebody that I know, tries to reach out to you to say, oh, this is nice. It's happened to me, actually. This is nice, but this is a better way to go about it, right? You don't just get that when you're learning privately. You don't. And lastly, it helps you build connections. Now, I've gotten a lot of help from people on the internet, right? Because I share publicly. I've also gotten opportunities. I've been in position where I was able to help a lot of people just from sharing my knowledge. I would like to share this quote from one of my favorite books, and it says, "The impulse to keep to yourself what you have learned is not only shameful, it's destructive. Anything you do not give freely and abundantly becomes lost to you. You open your safe and find ashes." And this is by Annie Dillard. And this quote is from one of my favorite books. I highly recommend this book called Show Your Work. I picked a lot of actionable tips from reading this book, and it ties very well to learning in public. This book tells you or shares actionable tips on why you should be sharing your work publicly, what you get out of it, and some ways to actually go about doing it. So if you would like to get on this idea of learning in public, you should definitely get this book. It also really shares something that ties, like I said, ties very well into learning in public. The idea of learning in public is to learn and then share, learn and then teach. Learning and teaching a topic or a concept helps you solidify your knowledge in that area that you're trying to teach. And this is something that I've done consistently since the start of my career. I'd like to share my story just to wrap up. I started as a developer in 2017, and at the time, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't plan to make content. I didn't plan to make videos. I didn't plan to write blog posts. But at the time, I decided to hop on the 100 Days of Code challenge. And that was how my journey of learning in public started. After completing the learning in public challenge during the period, every single thing that I was doing, I was sharing publicly. I would write a weekly recap of what I did every week. I even went on to create a personal blog following the Code Newbie Blog Mode Challenge in 2018. I consistently continued on this path, and it led me into speaking and organizing events. I didn't plan to do these things. They just found me. And going further, I explored different ways of sharing and learning in public. I've gone ahead to create a YouTube video just because I want to try different mediums of, sharing publicly. I also have a newsletter where I every week share something that I've learned and also a recap of everything that I've created. And that's my story. I didn't step into my career saying, oh, I'm going to be a developer and a content creator. It was during the process of going through learning in public, learning model, that I stumbled upon this idea, and I've been consistently doing it. So I hope that this talk gave you an idea or just opened up your minds to try some of the learning techniques and learning models that I shared during this talk. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment on my CodeLand posts. I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.